Hey, this is Joe from the World of Hoops. So this is part 2 of our series on leadership. And if you haven't seen the first part, just click the link and you can start with part 1. But jumping into part 2, this is really about some of the things that you've seen from leaders, great examples of how leaders go above and beyond and how they demonstrate leadership. Sometimes this is on their way to being great, and sometimes it's when they're already considered a great leader. The first thing I'll talk about is learning and making mistakes. Learning and making mistakes go hand in hand. And some of our best lessons come after we make mistakes. You'll find that in all these great leaders we talk about, if you dig into them, you'll find out that they're almost obsessed with learning more. And they'll go to great lengths to do that. And one of my favorite examples is Kobe Bryant. So he has developed, and you can Google this and find it, but he's developed this habit of actually reaching out to very successful people in other fields, business, entertainment, just to understand how they lead, how they operate their daily life, what their routines are. And the people on the list would surprise you. Michael Jackson, Oprah Winfrey, Ariana Huffington, Anna Wintour. These are names that you certainly wouldn't expect Kobe Bryant to be hanging out with and having lunch with, but he did it because he wanted to get better. Great leaders help others and put other people first. There's this misconception sometimes that great leaders, once you get into that leadership position, it's a position of power and people should just do things for you. But reality is that truly great leaders that teammates would run through a wall for are really what is sometimes called servant leaders, which means they serve the people on their team and in their organization. You know, we talk about leadership, we seem to mention the Spurs a lot, which should tell you something, but a good example was Tim Duncan in the 2016 NBA playoffs. This is a first ballot future Hall of Famer, one of the best power forwards, if not the best power forward to ever play the game. And in a critical game, he played less than 10 minutes. You know, he knew his coach decided to put him on the bench, and even though it may have hurt his pride a little, he swallowed it, he cheered on his team, and he was ready to go when his number was called. And it was in the following game. You know, another example of servant leadership, Dean Smith, who coached North Carolina for years, who was Michael Jordan's coach at North Carolina. He and his staff would actually sit in the coach class in the back of the plane and let the seniors on the team sit in the first class seats in the front. To be a leader, you need to be able to accept tough feedback and work to fix it. And sometimes that means admitting you're wrong and taking somebody else's opinion. You know, you hear things like your shot takes too long to get off, or your handle isn't strong enough, you're out of shape, your left hand is too weak. You hear these things, and that type of feedback, it stinks, and no one likes to hear they're not good at something. And it's natural to start comparing yourself to other people and say, well, I shoot better than him, or I handle it better than them. But that's not what good leaders do. What you should do with that feedback is take it and just act on it. The person who gives you the feedback, say, hey, do you have any ideas of how I can get better at that? Those best leaders, they know their weaknesses and they work on them. And we'll stick with the Spurs theme, but Kawhi Leonard, when he came into the NBA, everybody said that he couldn't shoot. And in college, he really couldn't shoot. But then he's improved his shooting percentage every year to the point now where in the 15-16 season, he shot 45% from 3, 50+% from the field, and almost 90% from the free throw line. He took that feedback and acted on it. Lead from the front. It's one of my favorite sayings. Leading from the front is similar to leading by example. It means that the leader that leads from the front pulls his teammates together for off-season workouts. It means if coach yells at you, you say, yes, sir, instead of feeling sorry for yourself. It means winning sprints at the end of practice. It means keeping your teammates in line when you're off the court. leading isn't easy, and leading from the front is even harder because it takes courage. You're gonna have to do some things that aren't popular. And being a leader isn't easy. If you're gonna lead, you're gonna have to take the blame for some things that aren't your fault, and you're gonna have to give away the credit when maybe you're the one who deserves it. That is leading from the front. We mentioned this in part 1, but adapting to change. By nature, things change, people change, and generally people resist change and are opposed to it. And when you do that, oftentimes you get left behind. Basketball has changed a lot over the years. If a team that tried to play basketball the same way it was played 20 years ago, they might be in some trouble. And if you went back 50 years ago, you'd be screwed. And further than that, you're not even really talking about the same game. A good example is the three-point line. When the three-point line was introduced in the NBA that first year, there were only 2.8 three-pointers attempted per game. Everybody thought it was just a gimmick. And now you have teams that are shooting 25 or more three-pointers in the game. I mean, it's just 10 times more threes than when it was introduced. And the Warriors were one of the teams that wholeheartedly embraced the three-point shot, along with playing some pretty great defense. But it's done wonders for them. Steph Curry became the MVP of the league by bombing away from three and being the best shooter the game's ever seen. But the team embraced that philosophy and they were ready for it. So they adopted the change and they thrived because of it. Make tough decisions. Decision making is an underrated ability. We're not talking about what you're going to have to eat for dinner or where you're going to go for dinner, not that decision. We're talking about really difficult decisions. Like maybe breaking off a friendship with someone because it no longer makes sense or it's bad for your life or your game. Or a decision like Coach Ken Carter from the movie Coach Carter, made when he chained the gym shut until his players met academic standards. The easy choice would have been for him to keep the gym open and worry about basketball and ignoring what the kids did off the court. But he made a really hard choice. He led from the front and he made a really tough decision. Thinking about tough decisions always reminds me of a little short writing called The Easy and the Hard. I think I first saw this, something that Don Meyer put out on the internet or at a camp. Don Meyer's a legendary coach, but I'm not sure who originally wrote it, but you can find the link in the description or on the website. It's called The Easy and the Hard. Great leaders are themselves. You hear be yourself, but great leaders, they are their beliefs and their morals and their values and their hobbies and everything. And along the way, you'll have parents and teachers and coaches, they'll say, be yourself. And it's something you'll hear a lot over the years. But when you look at great leaders, they often are themselves. Magic Johnson was charismatic and a showman with a quick smile. That was who he was. And Steve Jobs wore his black turtleneck and New Balance shoes and jeans when everybody else was wearing suits. He was himself. He was unique. Martin Luther King was a powerful speaker, and he had strong religious beliefs, and he incorporated that in everything he did. These leaders and many other embraced their own personalities. They didn't try to be something that they weren't. They made public their beliefs, and they fought for them passionately. When a leader embraces that be yourself mantra, it shows they're an authentic person. It builds a bond between them and their team. Trust. We mentioned this in part 1 as well, but trust is vital for a great leader. You have to demonstrate that trust. And I like to come to the Michael Jordan example. He was a great leader, albeit a tough one and ferocious at times. He led with an iron fist, and you can reference the Steve Kerr practice punching, and he was very demanding. But he didn't really start stacking up those championships until he started trusting his teammates. And some of the biggest plays for the Bulls were those the three-point shot from John Paxson and the 17-footer from Steve Kerr. Those are passes from Michael Jordan. He built a trust with those players, and it paid off. Great leaders realize they can't do it all themselves. They build up trust and they let people operate in their own way. They also aren't threatened by someone that might be better than them. Instead, they mentor that up-and-comer and they try to make that person become the best that they can be. So that wraps that up. Those are a bunch of different demonstrations and examples of people showing what good leaders do. Part 3 is coming up next. In part 3, we're actually going to give you a list of things you can go out and start doing yourself tomorrow to develop your leadership. It should be part of your training, just like working on your ball handling. If you haven't already, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and check out part 1 if you haven't, and part 3 is coming soon. Leave comments if you have questions or thoughts, and use it as a place to talk about leadership.